Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, February 1st. This is Senate Agriculture. And I'm stepping in for the chair who will be with us shortly. We're talking to begin with Legislative Counsel Michelle Childs about S188, an act relating to regulating licensed small cannabis cultivation as farming. So Michelle, thanks for being here. I think unless committee members want to jump in, I think part of our question is the bill is drafted to say small outdoor cultivators, which is 1,000 square feet on current ag land will be considered ag. And one of the questions we had was, are there ramifications for just saying all outdoor? What would it look like? I think we've understood the delineation between indoor and outdoor, but it seems a little illogical, at least to me, that we would sort of put a limit on the size of an agricultural product as what we consider ag and farming. So could you help us understand, to the extent you know the thinking, but more importantly and more relevant to you, that any other sort of side effects or ripple effects that if we were to make that shift?
Sure. So, and I did just text Bryn actually to let her know. I know she's in another meeting, but I told her I would text her if you guys were interested in hearing from her. So hopefully she'll join us. And I don't want to speak obviously on behalf of the board, but their proposal was to limit that designation to the small cultivators who grow outdoors. If you look at, and I would say rather than looking at the bill as introduced, you recall, and I can pop it up on the screen if it's helpful for you. I don't know if it is or not, but the amendment, so that Michael O'Grady had worked with y'all a little bit on kind of refining the language there, and I drafted an amendment for the committee the last time I think you met on this, and it goes through and it has the parameters of like what you essentially get by the designation of farming. And I think that's really where the issue lies, is whether or not, because it does, because that designation comes along with things like, an exemption under Act 250, exempt from regulation in terms of like local zoning and things like that. People can have a policy difference of opinion as to whether or not they want the larger cultivators to be able to avail themselves of that designation.
Do people want to see the language, or should we just keep the discussion going? Committee.
I'd like to see the language.
Yeah, I'd like to see the language too, but also, just to be clear, are we talking about even for the larger cultivators, in order to get the status of being regulated as agriculture, would only be for those who are already enrolled in current use program? It wouldn't be somebody new who comes up from somewhere and buys a plot of land and decides to like become a farmer and cultivate marijuana. It would only be for people who are already in the current use program. I don't know if that helps or not, but I think that's part of what we were talking about.
That I do not know, because I'm not familiar. That's kind of more Michael's realm, but I don't know why. I don't know why that would prevent someone, as long as they are licensed. I don't know. I guess I'm Senator Polino. Why do you think that it would only apply to those who are currently enrolled in the program?
Well, we would make it so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying we would pass a law.
Okay, so you're saying that's the direction.
I'm not so sure. I'm not saying it would help solve any problems, but
okay.
That's just one thing we talked about.
Well,
okay.
I do believe that was part of our initial walkthrough. Yes. Was that
okay.
is how this is drafted.
Okay.
We understand there's some politics involved here, and that people are afraid of the specter of somebody buying a field, turning it into a cannabis grow and then becoming a farm and taking, or along that process, getting all the advantages, versus that's a concern, versus a farm that says, hey, we want to diversify, and nephew is really into this and it wants to seek a permit, and the law making it kind of simple for that. That's I think where we're at, recognizing there's some politics involved in the relative lack of oversight when you are designated as a farm.
Right. I think so. I guess I was trying to understand. So, Senator Pliny, you're saying that like as long as it was already the land was already enrolled in current use, if you have the designation, yes. I think maybe what I was getting stuck on was your idea of somebody coming from someplace
Right.
else and then buying land, creating a farm, and then designating as part of it as for cultivation of cannabis.
Yeah, it seems if we required them to already be in current use, we're talking about Vermonters who are already farmers, who,
Right,
as Senator Pearson said, then decide to put a couple of acres of marijuana on their farm.
right, and it does, and the language does designate that as long that it has to already be enrolled in the program prior to the start of the cultivation.
For the
But-
small cultivators, yes.
Yes.
So let's take a look at the language if
Okay.
you're all right with that, Michelle.
Wrong one, right?
Oh, you had it there for a sec.
Yeah, it's actually, that was the wrong one. I got too many things open.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, can you see that all right?
Yeah, go ahead and make it a bit bigger if you could.
How's that?
Okay.
So this was the amendment that you worked on with Michael. So you see it's replacing section 3 and the bill is introduced. So starting in subsection A, so when a licensed small cultivator, so that is, I think, less than 1,000 square feet, is growing outdoors. And again, that's something that's different from the bill as introduced. I think that was originally when the board had asked for this, they didn't designate the outdoors, but they had come into committee and testified that they wanted to limit it to the small cultivators who grow outdoors on a parcel of land that's subject to RIPs. The land used for cultivation of cannabis and the farm buildings used to dry or process are to be regulated as farming and not as development. So that's the Act 250 provision on line 13 and 14. Lines 15 and 16 not be regulated by municipal bylaw as set forth in Title 24. So there's an exemption from zoning and things like that. And then subdivision A3 is be considered the production of an agricultural product, farm crop, or agricultural crop for the purposes of enrollment in use value appraisal program.
Just to jump in, so the trigger is not enrolled in current use, it is subject to the RAPs.
Well, let's see right here.
That's
I have to look at it because I thought, right, you're right. I thought there was a provision that said that. Let me go back and actually look.
yeah,
at
no,
it.
the very first line, or the line 10 there. When you're on a parcel of land subject to the RAPs.
Right.
And those are sort of O'Grady questions, but
Right.
So I have a question, Chris.
yeah, Senator Collmore.
Why would we not already want the land enrolled in current use? Like if it's already a farm, why wouldn't that land, regardless of what you grow on it, already be in current use?
Well, I should think it would be, but here.
Line 17, 18, and 19, though, sounds like it's going to be introduced into enrollment.
Right.
So I'm confused.
Right. Let me look at.
Well, for the purposes of enrollment, meaning you're still qualified for current use, I think is.
So I'm gonna take down this. I'm gonna pop up the bill as introduced because that's where the language that you're talking about. So if you look at, can you see this now. So if you look at subdivision 3 here, consider.
Would you mind just making it a little bigger?
Yep.
Thanks.
So that has the language that you were talking about, provided the agricultural land or farm building was enrolled in the use value appraisal program at the time the cannabis cultivation commenced. So that's going to that. And I would have to go back and talk to Mike about why that language is not in the amendment.
Okay.
I don't know if that was just an oversight or if it's not, or if it's implied by the way that it's structured, but I'll shoot him an email while we're chatting.
Okay. So Michelle, maybe you could pull that down. Thank you. So are we agreed that we want to make sure that we're not interrupting a land that's enrolled in farming, enrolled in current use, subject to RAPs, however the legal trigger is, we want to do something in this field, right? Right? Are people comfortable with, we can debate the size and we should figure out the right trigger, but we're interested in this at some level, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do we, Michelle, one of the questions that's nagging at me is the board, Cannabis Control Board, seems to distinguish not strictly on indoor, outdoor, but on natural light and electronic light, I guess. I don't know the other. And so it's been bugging me a little bit that a greenhouse, I'm not sure how that fits in here. Do you have any sense of how I can look at the licensing because it comes into the fee structure, but it seems to me we should adhere to the delineation that the board is making already on those questions, which I don't think is just a straight indoor outdoor.
Okay, I would have to take a look at those. I haven't been working on the fee bill, but I can, and that also, if once Bryn joins us, she can probably address that.
And Linda, do we think Bryn is on her way?
I think she's waiting to hear if Michelle wants her. Isn't that correct, Michelle?
I did text her, yep, but I know also that she was in a meeting. So I told her that she was not planning on attending, but I told her I would text her if you guys were interested in hearing from her.
Oh,
Here she is. Ask and you shall receive.
Perfect.
Good morning, Bryn. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us quickly. I'm sure you're busy. We're trying to wrestle with some of the details of S188, and a couple of questions come up. So one is, do you have any opinion on the trigger? The original draft said the land had to already be enrolled. Then we're looking at language that said it's land subject to the required agricultural practices. Does the board have an opinion on which of those we try?
Okay, sorry. I had something else going in the background. So will you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I missed
Sure.
it.
Just a couple of questions, I think, as we're stumbling through S188. There's, I think the intent is to take land that's already farming and make sure that it continues to be all considered farming as we hope that farmers come into the cannabis economy. The distinction, one draft we've seen said if it's a land that's currently enrolled in current use, and another language says that it's land subject to the RAPs, required agricultural practice. Does the board have a distinction between which of those is better?
So I think that it's the board's position that it would be better if it were land that were already enrolled in current use. But I do think this is it's a legislative question, as I spoke with this committee earlier. The board's directive from the legislature is really to prioritize people who are small entrepreneurs, small cultivators. So that was really the goal with S188 at the outset. And I do understand that there may be some political questions involved about current use. So, I think that essentially it's the board's preference that the land be enrolled. And if a portion is converted to cannabis production, that would not remove it from current use.
Right, which is already the law, I think, but this is a little different in terms of having the suite of farming practice, permissions applying. The other question is, the draft we're looking at talks about outdoor grows, but I believe you testified, maybe in Senate Finance, I'm getting it all mushed together, but that the board delineation is not indoor outdoor, but natural light versus something else. And so it seems to me we would try to true this up with the distinctions, the delineation you're making. Could you just talk about that?
Sure. So in the rules, we're defining outdoor cultivation as being cultivation using no artificial light, and indoor cultivation as using artificial light. So we proposed in our tiering structure, outdoor cultivation tiers, indoor cultivation tiers, and then some mixed cultivation tiers, which would allow for a certain amount of indoor cultivation space and then a certain amount of outdoor cultivation, actually a plant count for outdoor cultivation. So that is the proposal that's moving in the fee bill. And tell me how can I, what was the question about how that interacts with?
The question is, is a greenhouse considered outdoor grow? And do we need to be careful about that, or are we, stepping on our own feet here in that sense?
Well, I think that we're really working in our rules to define those terms, and the way that we have the kind of point we've reached is really a bright line rule that if you're growing in a greenhouse or a hoop house, that could be considered outdoor cultivation as long as you're not using any artificial light. So that's what the board has. That's where the board is at the moment. We are, still working on our rules, but they should be filed later this week, and that's the decision they've reached on indoor outdoor cultivation.
So our using the word outdoor would presumably fall under there.
Yep.
And are there not people that have a greenhouse that they then add lights to give themselves an extra hour or something like that?
Yep. And that would be considered indoor cultivation under the rule. If there's any artificial light added, then that would be indoor and would require either the mixed cultivation tier or an indoor license.
Okay, thank you for putting up with my bombarding of questions. Any other questions from committee? Sarah Colmore.
Thank you, Senator Pearson. I just want to be clear, Brent. So to use Senator Pearson's term, the triggers, plural, if you will, is that the land already has to be following RAPs and it has to already been enrolled in current use. Is that the board's position?
I think that is the conversation that the board's had to this point. Yes.
Okay. And the size has been limited to 1,000 square feet, correct?
Under the proposed, under S188, yes, it would be limited to small cultivators defined as 1,000 square feet or less.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, it would seem that the proposed amendment that Michael O'Grady offered us doesn't include both triggers, that it only includes the RAP. So I think we need to take another look at that. And as Michelle pointed out, it may have been just an omission or an oversight that it didn't, or there may have been a reason why the current use wasn't mentioned.
I think that that's a conversation that the board has had after that amendment was drafted, and that's why it's not.
I
Yeah,
also
it-
don't know whether, I don't know enough about this to say, but I would presume if you're in current use program, you're already abiding by required practices. Because
Yeah,
that's part of like, keeps you in the program.
it seems to me that we need to understand if there is a policy distinction, and I think that's an O'Grady question, and we want to just sort of make sure we've got the big universe and figure out. But I agree. I would guess they're almost exactly a parallel, but that's something we should know about.
I did email Mike, and so we'll get the answer, and then you can decide, because maybe even if it's covered by the lead-in language and you don't need that little extra clause on subdivision 3, you might want it for clarity, just so that folks like me who don't know anything about RAPs understand that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I think you're right, Michelle. I think that's important to be very, I hate to use the word transparent, but clear. So that anybody reading the bill can say, okay, this,
Right.
this.
Right.
I'm just wondering also, and I'm just throwing it out, if a town is in a position where they're strenuously opposed to this happening, this would not allow them pretty much to do anything in terms of zoning, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just the same if they were strenuously opposed to somebody growing corn.
True.
Okay, and then Bryn, you've testified that, for sort of starting, the board recommends the small cultivator only, but that I think you acknowledge that's sort of a compromise, understanding some of the history around this issue. So is it fair to say that the board, wouldn't oppose it if we decided that it should count all outdoor cultivation?
Yep, that's fair to say. I don't think that we would necessarily have a position on that.
Okay. I think we have our chair rejoining us. So let's go
That
ahead.
might be an issue for some of the members of the committee though, Chris, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to push us there. It's been something we've been talking about, and while we have Bryn, I wanted to just make sure
Yep.
that was clear.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
We've sorted it all out and voted out 6 bills, but it's good to have you back.
Well, that's good. I'll just have to jump off and call Becca and tell her to, refer them back to committee.
In fact, we have not done that. We've been bumbling through S188, and Bryn was good enough to join us, and Michelle's here, and we're trying to understand the whether or not the trigger should be enrolled in current use or land subject to RAPs or some combination, which is really an O'Grady question from the legal point of view. So we're trying to get that answer. And had a few other tidbits, and then we're wondering again about the size delineation and that's basically what we've gotten to at this point.
See, we talked about, I think, including all lands that are outdoor grown or all plots that are outdoor grown. And I don't believe, did you talk about that? And
Yes.
did you agree that all outdoor grow plots should be considered ag crops?
Well, if you're asking me, I don't think we agreed. We asked Bryn if it was fair to say that the board would not be opposed to that, and she did agree to that. It's something of a political discussion for the rest of our process. I think that's how I see it, but yeah. So
Can Brandon or Michelle might be able to answer this. Can one person have more than one outdoor grow operation?
Nope. So there's a one license rule that goes along with the cannabis establishment law. So it provides that if you have a cultivation license, you can only have that one cultivation license. So you can have multiple licenses, but they can't be within one category. So only one type of cultivation license allowed per business.
And small is 30-odd thousand feet.
1,000 square feet or
I
less.
mean, pardon?
It's up to 1,000 square feet of cultivation space.
And if you're and what if you're large? Is it the other size large or regular?
So there's, for the outdoor tiers, the board has come up with 6 tiers. The largest would be 37,500 square feet.
So just under
that's
an acre.
less than an acre. And if they can only have one plot per license and they can only have one license, so we would take those little plots, and I mean, I don't know why they shouldn't be all considered ag. Have you heard any reason why they shouldn't be? Committee members or guests, Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a firm opinion yet. I just don't want to automatically assume that we're going to go to the 37,000 square feet level. You know, I think this is something that the state is just beginning to do, and sometimes small steps are better. And if it needs to be expanded, it can always be changed. So I'm sort of feeling like 1,000 square feet, maybe a good first step. We also clarified the situation with respect to outdoor. It can include greenhouses as long as there's no artificial light introduced to the process. And that's an important consideration, I think. And then I'm still of the opinion that, as Michelle pointed out, sometimes just for clarity purposes, that the land already has to be following both the RAPs and enrolled in current use. And I know that might be kind of like belts and suspenders, but I think it's also providing clarity to people that would read the law and not know that if you're already under the RAPs, you're already enrolled, kind of thing. But so that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Any other opinions?
I mean, I think it's really hard to argue that it's agriculture for a little plot and not agriculture for a bigger plot. I guess though I recognize that there will be some uneasiness to that. The question I have is this sort of triggering thing. If the board is recommending actually that we go back to the language that says it's enrolled in current use, you can't do that. You can't enroll in current use just quickly, right? You have to have some.
Well, you've got to have a track record that you gross more than X number of dollars, and they certainly won't have that the first year because they won't have a history of selling. That meant I don't know. I would think the years kind of follow the calendar, I would expect. And so the first year, they wouldn't know until what, October or maybe November, December, if they met the threshold of, I don't know if it's $2,000 or $3,000 off that small plot. So maybe the whole that whole part is a little bit premature. Do you know, Michelle, if they file their current use application at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year for agricultural use?
I don't know, but I can look that up.
I almost think if you sign up this year, you don't really get qualified in until next year because you have to show that proof of income from those small plots or from any plot, like if it was strawberries or Christmas trees or whatever. And so we're gonna have to get Michael involved in regards to the sizes. Do you recall any of you, if Corey or Carrie spoke about wanting to have all outdoor plots under ag or not? When we had him in?
Yeah, asking me or the whole group. Oop, I'm cut out. Sorry, my internet just cut out, Bobby.
Did Corey mention, not Carrie, did Carrie mention whether all the 37,000 square feet plus 1,000 should be considered under ag?
I don't remember, Bobby. He
Yeah,
might have.
me,
I don't remember either.
No?
the thing is, Sarah Collmore, you've expressed some concern. I don't, to me, this is not a big fight worth having, but I would say that, we're not talking about a lot of land. We're talking about an acre. on a
Understood.
farm, which is, I mean, Bobby, you tell me what's an average farm growing for corn up your way? I mean, it's a heck of a
Well,
lot more than an acre.
if you only grew an acre, you'd be growing sweet corn for a lot of people. An acre is pretty small. I mean,
I mean, to me, the value here is sort of in the criminal justice realm and adult use and dealing with reality there, but it's also ought to be a diversification strategy for the ag economy. That's when I sit in this room, that's kind of where my mind's at it. And under that, it's really hard to argue that it should only be the very smallest, I think.
well, certainly a lot of these small farms that have gone out and maybe thinking about it would maybe think twice if they could grow an acre of this stuff and make enough to support the dairy side and the veggie side and the other side of their farming operation to survive. As far as being too quick, I don't know if we set this in stone without it being ag, if we'd have a hard time in another year to advance it to include all outdoor grow. And did you have any opinion on, from the board's point of view, on whether those 1 acre plots should be included or not in ag?
So the board did recommend that the small plots, the small cultivators be included. And that's because we have a specific legislative directive to make accommodations for small cultivators. And I think that it's the board's kind of perspective that with respect to the current use question, that if it should not necessarily penalize a farmer if they wanted to start cultivating cannabis, but it also shouldn't necessarily be an incentive. And I think that's where they wound up on the question of whether it would current use would apply to people who were existing, or if it should apply to everybody, or if it should just be for those who are existing, enrolled in current use. And the board did have conversations with Carrie from the Agency of Ag about whether it should apply to all cultivation sizes or just the small cultivators. And I do think it's his position that it should apply to all sizes of outdoor cultivation. But I'm not sure if he shared that with this committee or not.
Well, somebody has, because I remember we had the conversation and it came up that all plots, you know, if they're even the 37,000 square feet, somebody brought up in our discussions that it should be all of them. And so you don't go out there and measure and figure out whether you're in or whether you're out, according to the square footage. But I think maybe we should all think about that. And I know that if you sign up in current use, usually you don't get in until the following years anyway. So we certainly got time to, you know, get the folks in, and maybe even the people that, you know, the current use board, there is a board that looks after current use, and maybe we could get the chair in and talk with them on that particular issue. So other issues that we need to flush out that you talked about earlier today?
I don't think so.
The rest of it's in pretty good shape then.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah,
And I don't know whether it's for Michelle or Bren, but the piece about allowing wholesalers to sell seed or small plants, what's the logic behind it? Because some people came up the other day and like were really opposed to that, if I remember correctly. And I'm just trying to remember what the rationale is there. It doesn't seem like it should be controversial to me, but clearly some people didn't like it.
The point there, I can answer that, is that the way that the original framework for the licenses worked is that it didn't provide for anyone to be able to sell seeds and clones to cultivators. And so we need to have a legal mechanism in place for cultivators to get their young stock in order to plant them. So
Yeah,
the
how else could they go into business if they can't buy seeds?
Right. So the idea there was to allow both cultivators to buy and sell, and also wholesalers to move those products among cultivators.
Okay, that's what I thought. It seemed logical, but
and what about Michelle?
I just wanted to add, so Brent and I were having a conversation about similar language there as it applies. And I wanted, can I pop up the draft and show you, because Brent and I were talking about, there is kind of just a technical amendment that we think would make sense.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. So, Brent, it was on the wholesaler, right? Or was it on the cultivator?
It's that line 7, if you scroll down, line 7 there.
Right, so, right, so what we were discerning, and this is just a kind of a wonky thing that probably nobody cares about, but on the wholesaler license, what they're able to do, if you look at line 1 on page 6, is they can purchase cannabis from a licensed cultivator. And cannabis does include seeds and immature plants. And so what you really need is they need to be able to sell the seeds and immature plants to cultivators. And so you don't really need this first bit in subdivision 3 that says purchase cannabis seeds or immature cannabis plants from a cultivator, because you're able to do that up in subdivision 1. So I think just because I'm going to be doing a redraft of the amendment to add in that language about making sure that it's clear that the land has to already be enrolled in current use, I'll add that language, and then I'm just going to strike this first part of subdivision 3, but it's just a technical amendment. But I just wanted to mention it to you.
And as far as the seeds go, can a cultivator retain their own seeds to regrow with?
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
Okay, because we got into this with corn. Remember, guys, that farmers weren't able to retain their own seeds, but
Sure.
we're all set with this, and so they can if they so choose.
Right.
Yes.
So that's important. So you're gonna redraft this and take out number 3?
Just the first part of 3. We want to keep the new ability for the wholesalers to sell seeds and plants to other cultivators, because
Yeah.
that's not already in the current law.
Right.
So I'm just going to strike up until the and, so right through here.
Yep. What's the rest of number 3? Is there any more to it? Okay,
That's it.
so, and so it would read,
It would
Yeah.
read and sell cannabis seeds or immature cannabis plants to a licensed cultivator.
yep, does that sound good with the committee then, I guess? No problems?
And then
So-
Senator Starr, just to show you the language that, actually I do need to be back on that one. The language on, that's going to be added on for current use is, if you look at this kind of highlighted language here, is that on page 5, the top of page 5, lines 1 and 2, where it says, provided that the agricultural land or farm building was enrolled in the use value appraisal program at the time cannabis cultivation commenced. That's
Yep.
going to be added to the amendment that you have, that was kind of that Mike O'Grady had reworked. That was taken out in that amendment. Mike's recollection was that Bryn had said she wanted it out, but and so now Bryn says it's good to be in, so we're going to add it back in.
No, anybody have any, you've already talked about this, I presume.
But yeah, that was the committee's wish, is for it to go back
Yeah.
in.
No, sounds good. So we need to talk with Michael a little bit on the agricultural land, or you do, Michelle, or,
On current use specifically?
yeah.
Right. I will let him know about your conversation, and were you thinking of setting another hearing and having some folks in from current use program to talk to you about this? And then, maybe we'll see if Michael can be with you for that conversation.
Well, I'd like to wrap that up
Okay.
this week, because, it's still got a journey, and I know everybody's gearing up for springtime, so we want to get this, to the house and taken care of.
Okay. I did just get an email from Michael, and I'm just gonna read it to you, if that's okay. And we'll see if there's more questions here. So
You
Mike
want
said-
to read us your emails, you go right ahead.
okay, can you see this email? No. I always get a little nervous there about the share the screen. So he said, for new enrollments or addition to a parcel already enrolled and there is no managed forest land on the parcel, the application is due September 1st. For new enrollments and there is managed forest land on the parcel, it's October 1st. Owners of agricultural land currently enrolled must annually certify by November 1st that the land and buildings meet the requirements for use value eligibility. What they need to certify to is that the land meets the current definition of agricultural land. Most people currently growing cannabis are not going to qualify as agricultural land. Maybe a few small cultivators will be enrolled because they took advantage of the provision that small cultivation does not render the land ineligible from use value. But other than that, cannabis is currently not an agricultural product and thus doesn't qualify use value.
We did hear something in regards to with the federal government. I don't know why it would jeopardize monies that the agency gets from the federal government on growing an illegal crop. We did hear something in those regards, right? Didn't we hear something about that?
You mean with regard to the hemp program?
No, not hemp, cannabis.
I don't remember that.
Nor
No,
do I. No.
well, that's another issue that we may want to have Michael chase down to see if you have an agency sort of looking after, if it's agricultural land that has to meet RAPs, then that means that the agency is involved in that operation. If they're involved in that operation and it's an illegal operation on the federal level, is our agency of ag going to get in any trouble with USDA because of that? So we need to check that out a little bit with somebody that might know. Michael probably could answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve.
Brian?
Thank you, Bobby. But from what Michelle just said, from Michael's email, and again, I'm just trying to understand everything. It seems like there's a path forward for people to do this. If the land has corn on it now, but the farmer decides to change it over to cannabis, there's a certain date by which that has to happen. If the land is forest right now, but again, the farmer decides to clear it and plant cannabis, there's a different date by which they would have to apply for current use enrollment. Those are the two things I got out of that email. Am I surmising that correctly, Michelle?
I believe so, and I can forward the email to the
Okay.
so you have
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah, September 1st and October 1st or something like that. So,
Yep.
yeah. Are there other questions that we need to ask Michelle or Bren?
No, but I just want to say that I think at some level we have consensus around some of the things we've got to sort out. And then we have the question of a policy decision for all of us around the size.
Yep.
Where we're going to draw that line. So we're getting close. We want to hear, I appreciate your direction here, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Can I just ask a question about, so I just want to make sure that I'm passing on information to Michael around, so what are your remaining questions about current use, or did his email take care of that for you? I just want to make sure you get the information you need to move forward.
Well, any way you cut it, if they're growing cannabis, and they would have to apply by September 1st if it's open land, and by October 1st if they cleared a plot early this spring and stuck in some plants, and it's in a forest that they have until October 1st. I mean, that they wouldn't get any money this year. They would sign up in September or October, and it would deal with their taxes on the next fiscal year, property tax. And it isn't like they would get any money the same year that they sign up. They'd be a year lag to determine whether they're truly qualified with their revenues on that little plot of 1,000 square feet, even on the bigger lot. What if they, they signed up, but yet a hailstorm went through or flooding went through and they had a disastrous year and everything got wiped out? They wouldn't qualify because they didn't generate enough money off that small plot. A new person, if you're already in, you're in anyways, but a new person asking for current use, wanting to apply for that, wouldn't get any money until the second year anyhow, even if they did sign up. So, and if we decide after we discuss it that the bigger plots can't get in the first year, we're gonna kind of take, small steps and see how that goes. Well, they would be a year behind, but that, to me, that's the only difference.
But keep in mind that the language says that you have to be enrolled before you cultivate. So you wouldn't be able to cultivate for a year and then enroll. And I think that's probably an important political consideration, but you got to be a farm. You got to be a farm today, and then you move into also cultivating cannabis. That's kind of the premise, I think.
So
Well, the other part of it, which is important, is it keeps you from being ousted from the current use program.
Yeah. It's hugely important. Yes.
So you can't even cultivate cannabis unless you're in current use?
You can cultivate it, but you can't receive the benefits of current use or designation as a farm. So you could be subject to local zoning and Act 250, all that. Right, Michelle? Do I have that right?
No, well, the way that the language is structured is that the provision around that getting the benefits is only on, you can decide what you want to do, but it's only on the current use provision. It's not on the bits about Act 250 and zoning.
I don't know if I'm following the discussion.
Yeah, could you say that again?
Yep. So I'm going to share the screen real quick and go back to this language. So this is as the bill is introduced, but the way that I thought that you had said is that you wanted the current use provision, you wanted this language that's on lines 1 and 2 to be added back into your amendment, which it had dropped off in the amendment. That provided the agricultural land or farm building was enrolled in this program at the time it was commenced. That is for this one for use value. It's not a qualifier for the Act 250 or the municipal piece.
Well,
But
that
if
may,
you're,
go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I'd say if you're deemed a farmer, though, you are then exempt from Act 250 and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're already exempt.
So it's kind of understood. If you're regulated as a farmer, as a farm, in a small cultivator.
Oh, right. All right. I get what you're saying. Yes. Right. So you don't have to have that up above because you already have the designation and subdivision 4 that you're already enrolled in current use. So you don't need that up in 1 and 2. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah. Boy, for such a small bill, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. Brian?
Thank you, Bobby. Yeah, so for me, the only 2 questions that remain now are the size of the plot, and we can certainly have more discussion about that. I raise concerns. I don't mean to make it, more than that. And then the second part, and I didn't realize till you brought it up, Mr. Chair, I think it is important to see whether we're putting the agency of ag under or in any kind of peril with the federal government by doing this. I want to at least get some clarification about that. And if Bryn would send the 6 levels of cultivation size to us, I think that might be helpful in our discussions about, whether it's, because the bill clearly says an act relating to regulating licensed small cannabis cultivation. So if we do decide to go larger, we probably are going to have to put something in the bill that changes the name of the act. But anyway, that's where I am.
Yeah, and so we'll have Michael and Steve, the guy from the agency, the attorney.
Yep.
Well, maybe they can work together and try to figure out the second issue. We as committee members have got to figure out the size of the plot, talk about that. And so I think we're in pretty good order, and Michelle's going to make those adjustments to the draft. And so if we could, we should have some time, maybe Wednesday morning after we deal with the extension service. We got an hour and 15 minutes there, and it isn't going to take that long to deal, I don't think, with the extension service on the, why it takes them a year and a half to hire an extension agent. So
Yep.
we'll plan to tuck that in Wednesday morning after the extension service.
Yep.
So
Did you?
I was
Go
just gonna say,
ahead.
I'll do the amendment. I'll send it out to y'all probably by the end of today. And hopefully Michael can be with you then. I'm already booked in another committee, but I think the issues you want to talk about are all Michael anyway, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you're always welcome if you want to come.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I don't know how much help I was today.
It's your
and
sheep.
Bren, if you're on there, the same thing's true for you.
It's your sheepskin chair, Michelle. It fits right in with the ag mission.
Yes, I'm trying to bring a little bit of the coziness of working from home back to being here in the State House on a daily basis. I have to say, so far, it's nice being back.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Michelle and Bren. And thank the committee for working some of that out before I got back. So very good. So we'll see you later. So Linda, are you on?
Yes, yeah.
So we'll put that in our schedule for Wednesday after the extension service. And I don't know if you're going to be in contact with Michael and Steve, or if I should do that. How's that usually work, Linda?
I'll check with them and I'll see if Michael can come. And if he can come, I'll get Steve too.
Well, and
I'll get them both anyway.
Yeah, okay. And so guys, what we got to think about is how to work out that plot size and see if a year is going to make any difference. But I think the only issue on that is if we only allow the little guys in, are we setting a precedent that we don't want to allow the acre size guys in? And whether or not, if we're going to go with a small plot, if we want to put some language in that little bit of a draft that would say, we will review the progress of the implementation of, implementing this, to review it, whether or not the larger size should be in, if it is outdoor grow. So, I mean, think about that, and we'll move forward. We'll talk about it on Wednesday. We could take a short break here. We've got Kristen from St. Albans, our DFA, coming
Yep.
in, Catherine at 11:30. So if you want to take a quick break, we'll punch back in at